Okay.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to episode 409 of Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. I appreciate you being here with me. David Nykl, Radek Zelenka in Stargate Atlantis, is back on this show. He is in the house, and he's not dialing in from the Pegasus Galaxy this time. So we have a much clearer signal. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Were we live last week during our aborted event?
We were not. We were going to be, but we couldn't get there. So
so
this is what happens.
I owe a much bigger apology to everyone then. Yeah.
No, you're quite all right. But this is what happens when you destroy the intergalactic gate bridge. You think you can just get rid of Midway Station, that there are no consequences. You know, it's not true.
Yeah, I know. Turns out it's just an old Lenovo laptop with a bad graphics card. It always is, isn't it? It always is. No, apologies to everyone for not being able to. It was bad Wi-Fi and everything, but we're back in fiber optic land here, and all well. It's a real pleasure to be back in this new era, shall we say, of Stargate.
Dude, Stargate is coming back. What say you?
I think it's pretty fantastic. I was surprised at the news, because it's a question that comes up frequently on panels and at conventions. Like, what would you do? What would you do? And I'm sensing it might come up again. Here we go. But that would you be interested if there ever was a reboot? And my stock answer always was, well, I have no idea if this is going to happen. I don't know. It seems like it's ripe and ready for a reboot, as witnessed the world over from all the fans and the incredible fandom. Much of what has been spoken about on your forum, and thanks to you. But
throw out your stock answer, man. Got to make a new one.
Sorry,
got to throw out your stock answer.
But the news came to me in the form of an email from Martin Giro that, and this is a fellow that doesn't write me very often, or I didn't really have too much interaction with him. So it's a little embarrassing, but it's kind of funny, because he wrote the email in such a way that it was written just to me. And I obviously BCC'd everybody else, but I was under the impression that he wrote me a very long email about Stargate coming back. And I was like, and it was, I was filming in Budapest, and it was like a different time zone. And I read the email just before going to bed. It was like late at night, well, midnight.
Oh, of course.
Like yeah, and I read it, and I go, Martin Giro writes me a long email, so I started falling asleep, and I didn't sort of process it properly, but I sort of thought that he's asking me to come back to Stargate. Or that's kind of in my mind what I was thinking, and I sort of thought, wow, this is. So I wrote back going, oh my, that's great. That's, my jaw hit the floor. I can't believe this is going. So when are we starting? And he's like, well, to be clear, it's a new show. We've got to get, we're going to start with other characters and stuff like that. Oh yeah. No, that's that's cool.
The fact of the matter is that sooner or later, at some point, I would expect someone to return. The question is who, the question is when. And
yes.
We are all kind of in that position right now, because it's fertile ground for whatever this thing is going to be, because they can do anything. It's been 14, 15 years by the time this comes out, maybe 15 and a half, 16, God knows. At this point, I'm just thankful that, there's a target that we can start shooting at, rather than just, hanging around, just saying, well, maybe one day. And now we have a point, and we have an objective, and the whole fandom is just, it's so nice to have something to talk about, David.
Ain't it though? Ain't it though? Well, you're right about the legacy characters. I hope they bring some of them back, and it's up to them. But honestly, one of the things that I'm excited about, I've been fortunate enough to sort of work a little bit since then, is the way the technology has evolved. In particularly volume stages, which I think are going to be a game changer for the new generation of sci-fi films. And I obviously I'm sure that the writers' room or the impending writers' room is aware of the possibilities, but you no longer have to go to these expensive locations, and you can do a lot on volume stages nowadays with the technology, and it's impressive. I shot a little bit on them, and it's the potential is amazing. It's amazing for what you can do with volume stages. So
Did you
that bodes well for an imaginative writer's room.
which show did you use volume stages? Was that Death by Lightning?
Well, indirectly, because there was a lot of CGI in the. You've done your homework. A lot of CGI in the, particularly in the Republican convention scene of it. But I was speaking specifically about Resident Alien.
Oh, really? Okay.
I was heavily prosthetized. I was going to say sedated, but I wish I was. But heavily prosthetized. I was in a full face mask.
You were
It's
an
the
alien.
episode with the Galactic Council, but I've got
Oh,
just
okay.
this full rubber face mask on. But we were shooting in a volume stage here in Vancouver, and the technology is remarkable because it answers for wherever the camera is pointing. So if you're,
Mm-hmm.
there's my video. If your camera is pointing this way, and you've got your background here, then the background video wall changes completely based on what the camera is looking at.
It
So you can
maintains the
actually
perspective
it's
of
like
the
it's like
camera.
having an entire building with a
Yeah.
virtual headset on. So you got to be kind of careful because you can get sick in there because your whole reality moves, but it just creates an unbelievable opportunity for filming anything really.
The Just to remind the chat that we are live with David, and if you are in the YouTube feed right now, you can submit questions to him in the YouTube feed, just so that everybody knows. And thank you to my mods, Lockwatcher and Anthony, for pulling this thing off. What was it like working? Did you get to work with Alan Tudyk?
Yeah, oh yeah, directly. He would never know it. Uh, he would never know it because I'm going to see if I can find a picture of it. Because he was, he would never see me. It's like I had the same experience when I worked with actors that were Wraith, and I had no idea
Right.
that I was working with them because you can't see behind the.
James Lafazano's, I have no idea who he was if I saw him offset.
It's
It's just the
it's
Wraith. Oh,
this
wow.
character. Let me
Yeah.
see if I can get my.
There you go. Wow. Okay, so there are different species. Okay, yeah, hence the Galactic Council.
I'm trying to
Wow,
see if
dude.
there's. My
It's
camera's
a
not.
bright. You turn down the brightness and we can see it even better for whatever
Copy
reason.
that.
If
Look
you
at
if you
that.
if
All
you
right.
make it like almost pitch black, it'll work. So
Okay.
that's what I've
All
learned.
right.
But that's wild.
Okay. You're right.
There.
You're
Wow! Look at that. Man, oh
Yeah, so
man.
it's that kind of car. I could see out of the tear duct holes in the but
Okay.
and that was enough but I still could see enough for the volume how it moves in there, and it's a galactic council, so it's a fantastical environment. There's no reality there to it, but I mean you could sub that for the streets of Prague, you could sub that for
Yeah.
for any planet, and it doesn't all look like the Lower Mainland. You
Right.
can make your planets actually look like other places.
Well, I see people skiing down that alien
Yeah,
vista there. No, it's not Grass Mountain at all. No.
yeah, I know.
But
Yeah,
how many
yeah,
days
yeah,
were
yeah.
you in that? Was that a single day or was that multiple?
Oh, fortunately, it was a single day. It was a single day because spare a thought for actors that work in prosthetics. It's one day. One day is enough. I empathy for someone like John Kerry who had to do that with the Dr. Seuss character. What was it? The Grinch, right? Or it was it. And
Oh,
he had to have like
Jim Carrey. Yeah.
Jim Carrey. Yeah, what did I say?
I
Yeah,
was like, a
sorry.
politician? The Grinch? Oh, Jim Carrey.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sorry.
No, it's
But,
fine.
but yeah, they had like an FBI hostage or yeah, no, torture guy come in and talk to him like how to withstand the thing, because
Yeah.
yeah, I mean you're surrounded, all your senses are taken out, and 16-hour days, right? So, and that was
You can
one,
lose your
and that
crap.
was I had enough, and I just can't imagine doing it like day in day out.
You had a 16-hour day on that day.
Yeah, that was
Wow.
well, because they want to get it all done, and they want and once the mask comes off, it's destroyed. It the foam rubber rips, and it's a one shot, one go thing. So on for as long as you can, shoot as much as you can with it, and then it goes.
Man. Um, a Bodymaker 16 asks an interesting question. Uh, is this the first time that you've done this level of prosthetics before? And what if they had chosen at some point to turn Radek into a Wraith? Would you have felt bad for that particular guy? And would it have been
Uh,
like, oh, please, if you're going to do that, just make it quick or kill me off?
yeah. I mean, I don't think it's no secret to anyone that it's prosthetics are hard. I mean, Michael Dorn, all the great actors that had to do that. I think Paul Giamatti now has to have a little bit of some kind of Worf thing on it for the new Star Trek show that he's on. So,
Exactly.
nah, 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 nah.
But seriously, if what can you think of the idea of turning Radek into they turned Roddy into a Wraith in the novels, but what if they had
Okay.
done it to Zelenka?
What if? Well, I'm seeing the makeup chair, so I'm not like this. The story might be interesting, but uh,
Exactly.
yeah.
So, what was I was thinking of it's gone. Tell me about your shoot on Death by Lightning. This is a period piece, yes?
Yeah. Death by Lightning
What
was
was
really
that
cool.
like?
Super great question. The cast. I mean, Michael Shannon, Nick
Right.
Offerman, Bradley Whitford, Shea Wiggum. I mean, these are some top-notch actors. And I mean, I didn't work with Matthew McFadden, who is luminous in this show. He was a parallel storyline. We were like the Republican operatives back in 1880. The period piece was really cool. It was filmed in Budapest, and I mean, it comes down to the clothes, to the details that you're wearing. It really brings you in. But it was also the approach that the director took. To the shoot. It was very inclusive. We were all in. We sort of came in, and it was sort of done like the way films are done, with lots of time and attention. They had like a VR headset for us to sort of look around and see what the set would look like, so that we could really like
Wow.
live in it. Even for the minor characters, right? We had this great sort of lived in experience, because it's a soundstage on the outskirts of Budapest. So to be
Yeah.
able to sort of channel 1880s Chicago, it really helps, the bunting and and the environment. And then, the characters just really bring it alive. And because it's TV, you have to shoot that out of it. You have to shoot every single angle. So that's why it took so long. But a great shoot. I remember just being really hot in Budapest for most of it. So a real classic summertime shoot. And yeah, and I came back last year for another show which nobody knows of yet.
Really?
Yeah. I shot with the same production company for a show called Three Body Problem,
Okay.
which is a Netflix
So season
uh,
two.
yeah, season two of that. Yeah.
I am a fan of the trilogy,
Did you read
and
the books?
enough of it, and I am debating whether or not to get into the the series because I don't really want like that perspective. I'm
I know
debating
what you mean.
when to dip my feet in
Hmm.
because there are some details that are changed. There are some like the Trisolarans are not named the Trisolarans in the I don't
No, the
even know what they're
Sunti. They're called the
called.
Sunti.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and
And
but the thing is it takes liberties. Of course, it has to with the books.
of
It
course,
it, it speeds a lot of things up, and it's a super rich trilogy. I'm halfway through the second book. The
what do you
the
think?
sci-fi is tremendous. The
Yeah.
imagination of Cixin Liu is just is brilliant. And our producers have really sort of tried to fit all that whole world into it. It's quite a trip, and it's hard science fiction. By that I mean like the genre. It's I mean, scientific equations, it's sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, you can't go into hyperspace because your flesh would fall off your bones. So you need to go. There's a lot of sort of reality in what the physics of it would be like, and stuff like that, which is super cool. You get that in the books, and TV, the genre, and Netflix especially, the genre of TV that it is, needs to edit quickly and is dealing with people's attention spans. So you're telling a dense, complicated story with some hard science fiction in it, as TV friendly as you can. So it's a challenge, but I think it's something that they rose up to quite well.
Did you see the first season in
I
preparation
did,
for this? And
of course.
what did
Yeah,
you
yeah, of
think?
course I did. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
So
what was your
it's
question?
so what did you so is this is sci I love sci-fi that makes you lean in and pay attention further. I
Yeah.
don't like sci-fi that I can watch while I have it on my phone in the corner while I'm doing the dishes.
Okay. Yeah.
If I'm going to have that, I'm going to put on something from Bravo. It's that my
Yeah.
sci-fi is when I'm going to sit down and plug
Lean
my
in.
brain in, not shut it off.
Well, this is a show for you then, for sure.
Okay. All right. I think you may have convinced me. Very good. All right. Have they said anything about a release date? Have you heard anything yet?
No,
Okay.
no, no,
Okay. Yeah. Well,
no.
looking forward to seeing
They
it
got to
then.
put it together. I mean, we just finished just a few weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay. So, all
so
right.
that yeah, yeah. So that still needs to get going.
Well, it's terrific to have you involved in more sci-fi content as we move forward. And I'm curious, when you're a part of those productions, does Atlantis ever come up? Or is it
Well,
the further that we get
ironically,
away from
it
that?
it does because
Okay.
one of our cameramen was Will Waring, a director from Atlantis.
Okay. So Will was working on it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Fantastic. Ah,
So
good.
it was really it was really great. It was like a Vancouver connection. So it was super great to see him.
That's awesome. And also in Hungary.
Yeah.
Okay, very good, man. Martin Tykl wants to know, who's also Czech. We had him on the show a couple of weeks ago. David, do you plan to return to Prague/BRNO Comic Con? How do you pronounce that?
Oh, Brno Comic Con. Okay,
Brno.
that's a city in the Czech Republic, and they have a Comic Con there. I think they just had one there. Peter
Okay.
Williams had gone to it. So the person is asking me if I'm coming to Brno Comic Con. No
Yeah.
plans, no plans yet. No plans yet.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. Very
So I can
good.
say to that.
Is it? Do you ever get sick of the convention circuit after all this time, hearing the same kinds of questions, or does the audience always manage to keep it fresh? I'm always curious from actor to actor to get their experience at this because, it's it's wonderful to see people, who recognize you and appreciate you for a role that you did, but sooner or later it's kind of like um I can understand how some actors would be like, you know what, I think I've really sang this song, and I think it's time to retire it and put it in put it in the attic upstairs. How is it
I
for
think
you in terms of Stargate fandom and continuing to see these new generations of fans spring up?
I think the one thing that's hard for maybe perhaps for some actors to realize is that it's a lived experience for me that's been the past 15, 20 years. And yeah, it's the same questions, but the person that's asking it is seeing me for the first time. And maybe
True.
even that question has occurred to them for the first time. And that's just simple. I can't expect them to know that. There's also a part of going to conventions, I think, which is in a way of explaining it, not as much about us as about the community. The community gets together, and we're kind of like the band on the cruise.
That's right.
We're the reason for it to happen,
Yeah.
but we're not the main reason for it to happen. The main reason I think is for the community and for the coming together and for the stories that are
Hmm.
shown amongst the fandom. And plus you get a chance to sort of maybe meet an actor that you liked and ask the question that you always wanted to ask, which is the question that he has heard 1,000 times before. So the mechanics of it are obvious. That it's I mean, to me, that it's an entertainment, and it's just a different form of entertainment. It's a more personal entertainment. So knowing that, it's not that I'd be disingenuous to think that I'm tired of this or annoyed with this. I know exactly what this is about. The weird
That's
ones
a
are when
fair point.
it's outside of a convention, when I'm sort of sitting on a bus or other places, and you sort of get that person looking at you, kind of going, "Where have I seen that person before?" So that's when you uh, sometimes comes up to you and goes, "Dr. Zelenka," and you turn around.
Oh no, you told me once. Oh, I think we were with Christopher Judge, and you had an encounter with a lifeguard at either a swim pool or a water park or something. Do you remember this story? And he was remembering you from Arrow.
It's ringing a vague bell, and the Christopher Judge thing might have been something that happened in New Zealand. Yeah, I
I
don't
think.
remember.
Well, you were getting into a swim tube, and you looked up at the kid and you said, "You have failed the city," and you shot into
Oh
there, and he went,
yeah, yeah,
"I
yeah, yeah. That's what it
knew
was. Yeah, that's what it was. Oh, it was at the water slide. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it."
yeah, 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 yeah. All right. But I don't immediately say yes. I just sort of let them sort of try and explain it, and first, then I shake their hand and go, "Nice to meet you."
Lockwatcher wanted to know, how did your time on Stargate compare to Arrow? Was it a similar energy? Was it more intense in terms of action? What was the vibe from one to the other?
Yeah, a different vibe, different vibe. I would say that Arrow was a harder shoot in that it's street level crime fighting. So there was stunts, lots of sort of ratchets and sort of being flung away from things, and cold middle of the night, and because it was so sort of technical oriented, it was very much it was very much work,
Hmm.
which it always is. But I just remember Stargate being a little lighter, a little bit more joking around, a lot more joking around. Sort of a more of a lightness on set. But with Arrow, I just remember having to, showing up and working hard, and it took sort of a while to get into the sort of, and to know the to get to know everyone there, because I was there so on and off, and I only worked with Steven. So by the time I got to know Paul Blackthorne and Emily and those, it was it sort of took a while to get into the cast. It ended up being 5 years, sort of on and off. There
Right.
was a couple of years that were off, but the story sort of the Bratva and that came back in, I think, in season 5. So that was a nice year. That was a big year, but it was a lot of work with Stephen Amell directly, and those are the scenes that I enjoy the most, is the direct sort of one-on-one scenes.
Was the enormity of what DC is felt on the set in terms of wanting to get it right and doing like really paying attention to detail? You find that these people, or was it,
Yeah,
were,
I mean,
was
I
that
think at that
were you
time the
protected from
dynamic
that?
was that. I'm sorry, I missed the rest of your question.
I apologize. These are a little bit delayed. Were you protected from that just as an actor, just being able to do your job?
Yeah. Uh, I think what was happening at the time was that the Marvel movies were huge. The cinematic universe on screen was massive, and the DC world was getting a sort of a toehold in TV. That Arrow and Legion of Superheroes, what was
Yeah,
it?
Supergirl. Yeah,
Yeah, Supergirl and
there's
the other
another
ones that
one.
were around at that time were kind of creating a bit of a groundswell. So there was a feeling sort of like that we're actually getting something, that this is, quality television, or that's being made for at the rate that it's being made. Because it was, I mean, it's an hour every week and 20 episodes. It was a grind. I mean, there was a lot of pages to cover for every episode. So the sense, I think, was that we were sort of getting going, that the machine was running, and that it was um, pressure in terms of the what carrying the universe. I think Steven might have had some of that. I mean, he's carrying the franchise on his shoulders.
That's right.
You're asking the guy that comes in at number 6, 7 on the cast list and sort of has a few days. So for me, it's always fun because I love, playing the characters and doing the scene. The environment or the context in which the shows are being shot is sort of off my radar when I'm doing it, or less of a concern.
I haven't seen Arrow. I'm not hugely into the comic book scene. I got the impression that, I could be wrong, that your character wasn't an absolute villain. He was much more black and white. I mean,
There was
he was more gray and
Yeah.
okay.
It was a sort of it started out as a prisoner that was imprisoned beside him, became a friend. Turns out that I was like the leader of the Russian mob, the mafia, and trained him in certain spurious methods of the Russian mafia. So there's like sequences where I'm showing him how to build bombs and things like that. So we had a friendship. And then we had a falling out for a part of the season, and things weren't going so well. And towards the end of the series, we were beginning to patch things up, but things were sort of icy. But I think towards the end, things were patching up. I suspect some of your audience will know more precisely what actually happened.
It must be so much more satisfying on a number of levels. As fond as we all are of Zelenka, don't get me wrong. Keep Portland weird. No pigeon cup this time. You had a pigeon
Wait,
mug.
did I? Oh my gosh,
Oh
yes, I
yes,
do.
you
I still have
did.
that pigeon mug. Wow. Lucky I didn't grab that one today. You'd think I'd never
Right?
do my dishes.
Um, the the layers that you can get with this kind of a character, as much as we love Zelenka, have got to be far more satisfying as an actor for this kind of a role.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love that. I love that because it's stronger parameters, tighter parameters give you much more focus on making it like black and white film with Charles Chaplin. The gags and the humor had to come out because sound wasn't available. So the tightened parameters made for a heightened version of the art or a more applied version of the art. So I see that a little bit like with a day player when you're a character and you come in and you have it's usually stock characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, uh, I'm thinking of Milos Forman, the Czech American director, who is quote and says that you cast your main characters against type, but you cast your secondary characters pro type, so you can instantly recognize them. So within those
Mm-hmm.
characters that are recognizable, bad guy, security guard, like that, to give them within that constrained moment, that day play, that one day that you have, prosthetics and whatever the constraints are, foam rubber mask, can't see, can't breathe. Try to put the art into that, whatever, if it's a mask, if it's try to put whatever you're trying to breathe into the character. So that's sort of the way I try to approach it is you got one chance, one opportunity, mom spaghetti. Take it, you know?
Georgette fan 684. Eureka, you played a character who couldn't see. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yes, Georgette.
What was that experience like?
Anytime where they disable you, it's unpleasant. There's a
Oh,
person
they
that comes on
physically
set,
did.
is a contact lens lady. There's makeup, there's hair. Those are two departments because there's a big difference between this and this. But there's also a person that is trained in being able to stick your fingers into your eyes, and that person is the contact lady. And it were milky white contact lenses that they'd pop in, and I was effectively like milk white blind. You couldn't see anything. So you're debilitated. You have to
Wow.
be led to the mark. And then someone has to take your eyes out before so you can have your lunch and stuff like that. It's
Take
kind
your
of
eyes.
not pleasant not having your eyes around for that. But yeah, that was a long
I
time ago.
had I hear that when people like James Lafazanos, Andy Frizzell, they have talked about the fact that when the cat's eyes on the Wraith costumes or the Wraith makeup and the whole process go in, after they come off at the end of a day, you have this tunneling effect where your periphery is gone. It's just absolutely destroyed. Was there any kind of experience like that when they finally came
no,
off?
I'm hearing that for the
you?
first time. That sounds nasty. No,
Yeah,
these were just straight white,
straight white.
and much like the mask in Resident Alien, just a pleasure to get off at the end of the day. I was
Yeah.
lucky with Zelenka. I had a blue shirt on and I barely sat in the makeup chair. It was just this. So that's the way to do sci-fi.
Absolutely. Enos Hero 1488. I apologize, Enos Hero, if I'm mispronouncing that. At a certain point, you and I once talked about this, and I'm not entirely sure when the transition really happened. It was originally your idea to slip in some Czech. Am I right about that? Early on in 38 minutes, like there was a little bit of crossing over there.
Yeah.
At what point did it become part of the script?
It's a tennis game between the writers and the actors, right? I mean, the character originally was a Russian. We're talking now Zelenka. The character was originally, I think, like a Russian physicist, and when I showed up on set, I happened to meet Brad Wright, and we were sitting at the craft table, and I told him that I'm Czech and I have Czech background. I told him my one Czech joke that I know, and when the script came, the next script, the character was changed to Zelenka because that's kind of it's kind of like Jones in Czech. It's a common-ish enough name that it's kind of like the Czech Dr. Zelenka. So
Zelena's is green, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's a derivative of the word. So when when it came back as that, I sort of thought, well, that's great. And then when I could when they had like swears in Czech, right? Those are in the parentheses when they said swears in Czech. I took that opportunity, let's say.
My friend Martin, who's specifically, we had a conversation about this the other week when he was on, where they screw up. He doesn't care for listening to the Czech dubbing because in that language they screw up Zelenka. Like he'll say things, and then like Shepard in the Czech language will say something about the other language, and it's like not in context for that language for what's being said. It's like no, he would have understood that because it is in Czech, and it's one of those odd situations. It's like, well, this is that particular language.
It's these linguistic bubbles that are for people that are linguists are really interesting. It's like, the default language in space is English, and is it like there's some kind of translator or stuff, and you face that when you have like an international team, right? So I was sort of taking it that this is a guy that's going to have an accent because he's Czech, and Czech, people have accents when they don't have English as their first language. And we already know with the AI that's around now how that causes disruptions and misunderstandings, and like that famous sequence of the Scottish people coming into the elevator and going "alafen," for the floor, and not being understood. So when by default, when the production is in English and needs to be dubbed, which is the reality in Europe for most nations dub their television. I know some very good dubbers and some great translators. Hello, Flora. That do great work in translating it, but then it's you're then in Italian, you're in Portuguese, you're in Czech. So when a Czech character is speaking Czech, and then here's the thing, they dub me into Czech, so someone is speaking Czech for me, and then I swear in Czech, but I do in production. So he goes away, the dubber that's dubbing me dubs away, I speak Czech for a little while, and then he comes back to take my voice. Like, that's kind of weird, isn't it?
Absolutely. So you're allowed. So what you're saying is that your voice actually makes it in to the track where you're actually speaking in Czech, and then he comes back in later?
Yeah, I would think. I actually haven't seen that episode. I had that explained to me. That, he doesn't dub my expletives in Czech because,
those things are okay to say.
Or maybe he can't. Maybe he doesn't
audience.
want to. Or maybe they just bleep them out because they're for real censor worthy. I don't know.
Martin, you have your mission You must accept it. Go and get us the Czech dubbing and let us know. Because I was always wondering, like, when you give those lines in the show to an English-speaking audience, does it ever get to the point where, because I've seen the translate, Gate World was really good about publishing the Czech translations. They're largely fairly tame, but did you ever want to say something like there is no way that they're going to be able to say this in the Czech Republic?
I did. Those are full on Czech swear words that
okay.
Teaching the world to swear in Czech one episode at a time. If you want to know how to cuss, that's for real. I'm not saying any dang it. I'm saying the full the full thing here. But your
hair's good, man. Your hair's good.
No, I'm just saying coming up that the censors, I don't know how much they would have cut out of it, and there was also like an episode. There was one of the episodes where I broke the fourth wall in a kind of a sense that what I said in Czech was, I can't work with these actors anymore. I said that in Czech. I can't work with these actors anymore, and I had a fan in Prague go, "Why would Zelenka not want to work with actors? I don't understand."
Because it's
an Easter egg. It's an Easter egg for the Czechs. That's what that is.
So there's 3 times that's happened for your information and the fans' information. There's 3 times that I am aware of that's happened in the show. The other one happens on a Russian Foxtrot submarine in the beginning of season 4 of SG-1, and a replicator, one of the mechanical replicators, is stuck at the other end of a torpedo tube underwater. And one Russian says to the other, "What is that? What does it sound like?" And the other Russian, in Russian, looks to the other actor and says, "It sounds like one of those creatures from the last episode." And the other one is actually spoken by RDA himself. There's an episode in season 7 called Fallen, and someone points to Christopher Judge, and an off-worlder in the show, and says, "He is Jaffa." And Rick goes, "No, but he plays one on TV."
But he plays one on TV. That's fantastic.
And it's like, that is perfect. Like, it's hilarious and it's true. And so I'm gonna have to remember that those are the 3. That's a good trivia question. I'm sure there are probably more.
You're an encyclopedia. And the fans have document this, because in many ways I don't know if I remember a lot of what they were, but that's when I remember. It was like an evacuation of I was being frustrated with Chuck, I think, the technician. And
that's right.
Just, I can't work with these actors anymore, and I say that in Czech, and nobody knew that's what I was saying.
I have been trying to get Chuck Campbell on since the beginning, and I've heard he doesn't do interviews, which is such a shame, because I got to meet him on set when I was there with you guys one year, and he was a nice guy. I wanted to, actually, no, it wasn't me, it was someone else who wanted to, Hannah Kay wanted to know, when the rubber met the road, really, who was your BFF on Atlantis? Like, who did you find yourself leaning on if you had a minute and wanted to spend it with someone? If you had your choice in terms of the schedule and production, and you had some time to kill with somebody in between a take, who would it be? Or did it change on the day?
You talking about me as an actor?
Yesterday. You as a person. Yeah, who would you like to spend time with in between takes? And also, who would you enjoy spending time with the most on screen? And they can be 2 different people, or they can be the same person. I'm curious.
They sort of are. I mean, I really enjoyed doing scenes with David. That was
right.
That was a lot of fun, but it was also super fun to sort of hang out when we could with Jason Momoa. That was between takes. That was always a blast.
Did he always have his guitar?
Yeah. In the Pink Cadillac days, he had his guitar, and some of the shoots were just like, it's amazing. Like, they had like the tacos on the truck and the Mexican music. He's playing his guitar, and we're all just sort of hanging out on the riding the golf carts. Those were good times. It's the thing about shooting is that you're spending a lot of time with the people, and then you sit in your chairs, and then you're reading your scenes and stuff like that. So a default hangout on set is usually just sort of literally hanging out. There's there's conversations when they happen. But I would say it's sort of, we're spending so much time together that when we were actually on set and not interacting there, that I didn't, at least I went home and I had a young family at the time. And so after shoots, I'd sort of be devoted to being at home. But during shoots, it was a super fun shoot. And as Radek, as Zelenka, I enjoyed the scenes with David. I love that sort of back and forth thing, and I think that's kind of a little bit the genesis of Zelenka, was to sort of be a mirror, technobabble
Right.
mirror to what and a foil, and and the disgruntled, sort of that dynamic was born of those two characters, which I think was really was fun to do.
You were
Yeah.
both very, there's a certain amount of job security there because you are both facilitating story. You help
Mhm.
move the engine of story and the situation forward,
Laying pipe.
which laying pipe, that's right, putting the tracks in front of the train. The
Yeah.
You and I have talked about the complexity of the language, but one of the things that I've never really asked you about was uh, the manner in which you would assimilate it. So, were you the type of person who had to have the next day's lines completely down pat the day before, or were you the type of person who didn't need to look at them until the morning of, and then you got them?
No,
How
no.
was it? How was it for you? And has the process changed over the course of the years that you've worked?
Good question. No, preparation is and always has been the cornerstone. If anything, I've always been frustrated, and a lot of actors will tell you, to get scenes on the day, or just get paragraphs or pages on the day are panic inducing. I get that too. Are the ones that come before. I tend to be an inveterate preparer, read, reread, and advocate for getting the scripts as soon as possible. That sometimes was an issue because the writers would hang on to their rewrites, and there's little details that were, didn't affect the fact that you needed to get the script and try to learn your pages as soon as possible. Plus, there's the sort of the extra sort of layer of the character that Zelenka was, and assimilating it in the language, with the accent, with the sort of the way that it was done. It got better. It got easier as it went along, because you'd sort of know how the scenes were written, and you'd sort of get the rhythm of them, and you sort of assumed, oh, this will probably be a walk and talk. This will be this, and you sort of learn the
Hmm.
mechanics of it later, as seasons went along. But with all projects, I always try to advocate for getting the script as soon as possible, getting to sort of know the character as soon as possible. And then it's like a physical process. I like to sort of do it on the treadmill, on the bike, going for walks, on my thing, and running through it, so that it becomes an organic thing. It doesn't become just a talking head, and you're just not reciting lines in your mouth. You're breathing them, living them. You're gesticulating as you would, in those circumstances. So it's important. It's important. I don't wing it. I don't want to wing it. The more you can prepare, the better you are at winging it.
How often would you get scripts the night before on Atlantis? I'm
Not very,
curious.
to their credit, not
Okay.
very. But I mean, it's a tight production schedule, and back then they were doing two shows for the beginning of it. They were doing SG1
Yeah.
and Atlantis at once, so they were harried. They had their work cut out for them, for sure, for sure. So the reasons for why the pages might have been late, or were not forthcoming, or were evident, but that doesn't change the fact that as an actor, you want to get them as soon as possible and learn it as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Well, it's your ability to perform this. It's not just to say the lines, it's to perform them. It's in context of whatever it's going to be.
Lives, not
Hinges on you
lines.
getting, that's exactly right. Hinges on you getting as quickly as possible. Would you run lines with David
Yeah,
as if you could beforehand?
yeah, yeah, yeah. In the early days, we did more. I remember doing some read-throughs in his trailer, and just to get the patter right. Towards the end, we didn't do it as much because we sort of had it. You just sort of had the patter, and you just and there were sort of ebbs and flows in the relationship, in terms of how they wrote us together. There was a period there where I was being written with John Shepard a lot, and so
Hmm.
that's a different relationship. So there was working that, and didn't have so much interactions with Rodney, as he was having his love affairs and his sister and all of this. other things happening. But when they sort of started writing our sort of little stuff back again, yeah, we'd sort of covered. But a lot of it was sometimes were just one words, right? Because we'd already know what each other's thoughts were. So that kind of stuff was fun. And then there was the long sort of technical stuff that we'd have to sort of bounce off of each other and things like that. But yeah, that's the nature of the beast.
In universe, they grew the idea of two scientists into a bit of a triad with Patrick Gilmore, Jennifer Spence, and Peter Kalamis. Did any of those three ever approach you guys about how you approached your characters? Did you ever?
As a matter of fact,
I'm curious.
yeah. I mean, Jen Spence is someone that I knew before she got onto Universe, and yeah, we would have coffees together and talk about. I remember talk about sort of character development and stuff. And I know Peter Kalamis also from back when there were auditions, and Patrick Gilmore too from my from conventions. So in now in the sort of the post audition days, if you don't actually look up your friends, then you have to. Then you don't see them because you don't just happen to run into them at auditions anymore. But at conventions is where I would see them. Where I saw the three of those. But your question specifically to the triad was if they came to me,
ever asked either you or David for input on, well, this is essentially the same type of person in terms of being servicing the story. Like, was there ever any? Did they ever ask for any input? Ask you for any input?
No. Jen did. I just I just remember talking to her about character, but it was I think before Stargate Universe came along. So
okay.
It was just an actor's habit that we'd happen to get into, and from cold reading series and things like that, and scene study class.
Were there any? Was there anything that you've taken with you from that role in terms of prep that you've carried with you ever since?
You mean my seat back?
But well, yes, but I mean in terms of dialogue, my friend, dialogue.
I'm not taking anything, not my seat back.
I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's that thing there. Yeah, no. In terms of prepping for the character, is there anything that Zelenka taught you? Yes.
Stargate Atlantis. There it is, under there.
That's why I never had the Zelenka chair back to sell at PropWorks. That explains a lot. There was more than one. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, right. Exactly. I think everyone had a couple, but
yeah.
Is there anything in particular that he taught you that you continue to practice today in your art?
Oh, absolutely. I always maintain that acting school and theater taught me how to act, but Stargate taught me how to act on set. Okay. The technical nature of the education there was, I mean, you had to know your stuff, and you had to learn it quickly, because those directors and those crews were experienced and were doing it day in and day out, and knew what they were doing. I mean, I remember just one time when I was sort of still pretty new, and had done theater and figured I was a thespian. I was on set, and it was Peter Louise was directing, and it was one of those days where we just had to get stuff going, and he's like, okay, Zelenka, you start over there, and Shepard, you start over here, and like that, and we're gonna come in like this with the camera, and I come in and I kind of go, well, what if Zelenka started, I think over by here, and then came around, because I feel like maybe he's trying to do this and to say this and do this, and everybody, all 70 guys on set, kind of went. And I went, okay, so I'll start over there. I'll do exactly. I'll start where you said. You realize that technically it's been thought out. The lights need to go where they need to go. There's a tape on the thing, and that's what I was saying earlier about the constraints. The pressure. You have to do it, and under those circumstances, in those moments, you have to try to get that done. And that's sort of what it taught me, that it's nice to have talent, but you have to be able to deliver it in those moments that matter, in a way that is useful to the production. It doesn't do them any good if you're going to be doing stuff off to the side here, not lit.
You're not wrong, but you are more than a widget. You know, there's
Yeah.
there's a certain amount of, at some point, I mean, maybe not on the day, but I would want my talent to at least be a part of. Obviously, they don't control every scene. I get that, but I would want my talent to be able to approach me for an idea. Maybe not
Oh
as we're
no, yeah.
writing things, but
No, for
yeah,
sure. Let's not conflate these two things that I'm saying. One thing is that you got to work within the constraints you have and bring the magic in those constraints, and that I think that's what you're alluding to. But I'm talking about the
right,
training
exactly.
that does that does restrict your technically. You know, it's a different thing if you're shooting me like this than if you're shooting me like this, right? And if I know that I'm like this, then I have to keep my head like this. If I'm going to be doing this all over the place, this doesn't, see, that doesn't make it work. Even though I might think that that works for the character. So technically, I need to stay thing and do whatever I'm trying to do right here, right? Whereas if I'm over here, I can do it a little bit more. So that's knowing what size the lens is, or knowing how close you are to the
Okay.
to the thing. The acting is what you're doing, but the technical is doing it within those constraints that need to work.
Wow, there we go. That makes sense.
So
Let me. How much more time do you have, David? When's your heart
I'm
out?
cool. I'm cool. I'm cool. What's yeah?
You're good.
How's the show going?
Well, apparently we've got like 130 people watching, so it's a
All
good
right.
crowd, my friend. So absolutely, everyone's happy to see you.
Hello, everyone.
Vegan,
Happy to see you.
vegan peace, right? Vegan Peace Rider 2500. Back to the questions about cons. Is there anything? See, I would be curious about this as someone who found myself on stage a lot, but I don't know if I could necessarily come to the answer very quickly. Is there a question that, as a member of this monstrous thing, uh, you wonder that if someone will ever ask, or is it just no? I've answered pretty much everything that I could possibly think of for this particular thing. Is there ever a question that you, uh, as a performer, ever think of? You know what? I wish that someone would ask me about the process, or I wish that someone would ask me about the time that I we all got into a laughing fit at the table because so and so couldn't get this line right at the read through, or because speaking of that, some of those days can get really hairy if someone can't get through a line. That's like things like that. I'm curious.
So your question is specifically that, like,
Are
I,
you ever are you
I mean,
ever have you ever been in a situation where you were hoping that, I hope that this time someone
there's
will
a
ask me
question.
this question?
I've been asked a lot of questions over the years, and
Right.
people's curiosities have sort of flushed out sort of pretty much everything there is. I like the ones that you allude to about process, because
Right.
the process is unlike the finished product. The way that it's
That's
made,
right.
the way the sausage is made, is kind of interesting. Particularly, again, flashing back to the beginning of the interview, with
Hmm.
the new technology that's around, with the volume stages and the what cameras can do right now. So it's exciting what the technology of it can do, and in an age of AI and in an age of synthesized humanness, that sort of magic that humans and their foibles and their quirks and their eyebrows that shoot up, and weird things that happen that are uncontrollable, is what's going to propel us forward, and what's going to keep us engaged. I think it's what's going to keep us interested, because if anything, the processed world, we're becoming more and more familiar and a little bit more distrusting of it, because the way
Hmm.
information is coming at us in waves. It's
Hmm.
the human delivery, and the particular messiness, quirkiness, unpredictability, and way that it's said, that keeps the story moving forward and keeps us engaged and interested. And I think that's in some ways, those are the kind of questions that interest me, or that's the kind of direction I'm always interested in discussing with fans. I get worried if I get questions of like an episode two and like that, because
That's not fair.
I'm about the
No,
process. I'm not necessarily always about the product, even though I think the product
that's
is
right.
wonderful and stands as its own as an entertainment. That it's the process that, because I'm still in it. I don't want to retire. I want to keep working, and I want to keep sort of trying at this craft and at this business. So I take it seriously. I like it. I find it fascinating. I find it interesting, and it's morphing. It's changing. AI is changing the way we consume, the way people talk to us, the way information is given for us. I recently upgraded my computer, my old PC hell with AI, and the way it was walking me through all the steps. I mean, I was registering editing and registry keys and stuff like that. I would never do that on my own, but the AI is like, you can do it, you can do it. And I'm like, really?
You just have to
So
ask the right
it's
question. So yeah.
yeah, I got that's the right question. So, we're all learning how to work with this stuff. Whereas for thousands of years, we've learned how to, what I'm doing with you, talk to you. I get your
Hmm.
visual cues. I listen to your questions. I answer you. I know where you're coming from. I know who you are. So there's social capital in there, right? So you know what this conversation is about. But when it's synthesized, we get fooled so easily and we get led down a path so easily.
Yeah. Have you
Okay, that's a rambling
found?
answer to.
No, I loved it. I loved every moment of it. Have you found using a lot of these new tools like the volume, like well, let's set Zoom aside for a moment here because that's a very different question that I had with you in 2020 and 2021, the last time we spoke on this. Uh, do you find your days on set and in pre-production getting things ready? Do you find less time is being wasted? Do you find more time is being wasted because of these tools? Do you find that things are improving in efficiency, or do you find that things are slowing down the more that we bring ourselves into a digital space to accomplish the same tasks that filmmakers have been doing for decades?
Yeah, yeah. Oof, good. That's a tough question. I'd think it's the area
I
that
mean,
you're
for
working on.
you. I mean, for you.
For me, I guess in the research and prep department, I think I can go into AI and like for Death by Lightning, for example, or for Three Body
Yeah.
Problem, I can sort of uh, ask some questions that I have about the character, and so in terms of information and detail, it would work. In other departments, I mean, that's in my area in like terms of writing scripts and in terms of production quality and then how you put together scripts or production schedules. I'm sure AI is helping with efficiencies there. But the sort of whole Tilly Norwood or whatever her name is, the sort of the synthesized human as it
Right.
as it were, and the whole uncanny valley aspect of AI. Will Smith eating spaghetti and how that creepiness
Watching
sort
that
of
improve.
and watching that
Yeah.
improve. Yeah, yeah, which is almost creepier than yeah. It's
Right.
all sort of part of and it's curious that that's the one thing that we want to do the most is mimic our faces and our abilities. That's what we're asking of this thing is what we look at. I find its biggest use is that when you have something like when you're phoning like a phone company or an insurance claim or something like that, and you have to sort of go through your story every time because I said that this AI remembers all of that. So you put in all your problems. I have this kind of a system. I have this kind of a car. I want to do this kind of an oil change. It remembers all those steps, and it goes, well, because your car is 5 years old, you need to. It'll remember the context, and I find that very handy. Then sometimes humans forget that. Remember, I told you I was. Back in the beginning, they don't. But AI remembers your circumstance and can help you with particular
That's
problems.
true.
But it's when it comes to the esoteric stuff or human relations, or when you sub it in for sort of being a proxy for it's the ultimate sycophant. It's only going to tell you what you want, and I'm wary of
Mm.
that.
That concerns me as well. If I ask it anything that it's being, ChatGPT or whatever have you, the Google prompter, if I ask it anything remotely political, it's very quick to tell me exactly where it is that I am right or wrong on something, and
Wow,
leave its sycophanticness in the dust. Um,
really, really. So
but
it'll point you in a direction it wants you to think.
Well, and this is not to say that I'm suggesting anything that the system wouldn't want me to think, but I poke the bear as a matter of course in my work. And so I throw things at it to see how it's going to respond. I want to see where its edges are. And I will often, when I'm sitting there thinking of something and I ask it a question, I get the answer. It's like, what if I put the inverse of that? What would that do? And I put the inverse in and it says, well, it almost says that not only is this offensive, but it is wrong for you to even think it. Like, it doesn't say that, but it might as well be saying that. It will say that this is this is considered a very offensive thing and should not be used in X, Y, or Z. And it's like, isn't that interesting?
Isn't that
if
interesting?
It's so offensive, should it be so obvious for you to be telling it to me so emphatically? Or should you just be relaying the information to me?
Yeah, where does it have the right to be a moral guide, right?
Well, that's a good question, doesn't it?
Is it a pastor? Is it a priest? Is it a parent? Is it a teacher that's supposed to give you moral guidance?
Right.
You know, again, that's the part that's kind of freaky. How is it to know what is appropriate? And I mean, you are poking the bear if you are asking obverse. I also think, like, what if you have to research a very difficult topic? What if you're playing a serial killer? What if you're playing a serial killer? I'm talking about research, right? And you want to, like, say, what's the best way to remove a human liver?
Right. I'm sure at some point you've wanted on your side to put into Google, yes, I am an actor, search. Just so that's out there in the ether, because you do have to search some complicated things sometimes if you're playing a rather dark character.
Yeah, for example, and for it to morally, guide you. I suspect I'm seeing lawyers in this and kids using it, and they're worried that it can go there. But everyone's gonna, the first thing that they do is ask it the tough questions to see how it responds. You want to test sort of the parameters of it. That's also kind of what happens. It's a tool. We just got to learn how to use it as a tool, and it's going to be very disruptive for the next couple of years, because there's more money being invested in this stuff than I think even in the railroads when they were first being built. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, even adjusted for inflation, I think that's still perfectly true. Where do you feel the Zoom auditions have gone? I'm talking you personally, because I have a number of actors who are like, oh, it's great. I'm absolutely in my element. I don't have to see anyone. And I've seen other people who are like, I wish that some adult would come into the room and just say, you know what, this is good for another year, and then we're going to sunset it, because dollar for dollar, all things being equal, I think that the amount of time and energy that we're investing into this and getting, 1 in 12 auditions formally, now getting 1 in 48 or 50 auditions, is really wasting a great deal of energy and time more than before.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to where you stand on that, because I've gotten both sitting in your chair.
Well, I hate them, quite frankly. I think.
Well, I hate them.
Well, because the thing that happens is you get these disembodied. You turn a performance into a piece of thumbnail, right? And so you've got your iPhone and you've got your thumbnails, and you can scroll through all the editions, and you're hitting. We're becoming profiles of ourselves, and the sort of term chemistry is sometimes thrown around in terms of what the chemistry of a cast is. People have that within the first microseconds of walking into a room with each other. You sort of go, oh, that one's that's a natural.
They used to.
That's what an audition is for, and that's what the room is, and that's when, if you've got the production team in there and you walk in, they get a sense of you. Not just like what you're seeing right now, not just a digital box of me. They get a sense of you fully, and how you interact, how you take direction, and all that. So I'm definitely of the old school that this is, and I came up through the theaters and repertory systems and working together as groups. You see that on set when in the 4th or 5th year when the cast knows each other, when you have a repertory team on in a theater that has worked together for a long time, it creates a kind of human chemistry that you can't replicate, or you get unfinished sentences from each other. You get basically natural human reaction. And so therefore, I think that now projects that are cast exclusively off of self-tapes from various corners of the world have that sort of too much space between us sort of thing, and we don't get together until we hop on a plane and get into a room and work together. And then what if it doesn't work that way, look that way, or something? There's definitely something missing in it, and I hope it's the latter of the options that you offer. And someone's going to say sunset this, or maybe just as an introduction, okay, that's the people that we want, get the first self-tapes, and then fly them into the room, or bring them together, or do that. I don't know what the answer is, but I certainly miss the old way of interacting when you come into a room.
What do you see happening? You're actively auditioning out there. Are there any productions that are like, we're not doing self-tapes with Zoom?
We have a very
Are
very
there
good
some pushing back?
Yeah, we have a very good union here in BC, the Union of BC Performers, and they've negotiated for us a fantastic thing, which is basically that they'll arrange a studio self-tape. It's tantamount to an audition, but it's not one. But it basically means you get a self-tape from your agent, and if you respond right away and you say, "Book me a room, please," the production is compelled here in Vancouver. I don't think this is in other jurisdictions, to get you a reader and a camera in a room. And I take advantage of that service, and I sort of go in, and I know those two readers that I work with down at the studio, and they have the sides ready, and I just it's a one and done. You have to, just like the old days used to be, you don't fiddle with it, you don't retake it, you don't fiddle with your lights and stuff like that. You just sort of go in, a raw dog, and do an audition. I try to do those as much as I can. So that's kind of, it's a hybrid state of auditioning, because there's no casting director in the room to correct you or to give you feedback. It's just a reader, and they go, "Yeah." I go, "Yeah, okay, thank you, thanks for having this service," and then it gets sent off. So, but I would prefer if there was someone that says, "Okay, your take is completely wrong. This guy is like this and like this," and then if you can do an adjustment in the room and still nail it, that's sort of where the talent and where perhaps the employability comes from, that you can see that you are able to do, or you just made a bad choice in choosing your initial thing for the character, which might happen a lot, I guess, if people misinterpret the character, don't know the tone of the show, don't do their homework, don't prepare, etc.
So it is a one and done. You aren't invited to take a note and provide something in a slightly different way to adjust something in.
No, there's no creative people from the project there. There's
Okay.
just readers that just get the same script that I do. So you do the scene as much as you can, and then just you sort of hope for the best.
Well, at least you can demonstrate in one go that you can pull it off. Whereas
Perhaps.
when you're doing a self-tape, I know some actors who have taken 6 hours to get a certain take done.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, I hope you can perform on the day when you're in front of 150
Yeah.
people, because
Yeah. Because you won't have 6 hours to do it on the day. That's for sure.
that's exactly right. So, I have 2 more questions for you. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm all good. Yeah, I'm fine.
In season 1, episode 16, no, Letters from Pegasus, you get to speak in Czech a whole sequence
know
of
that one.
dialogue of Atlantis rising out of the ocean. How much
Yeah.
leeway were you given on that? Were you just told to describe Atlantis rising out of the ocean, or was that given to you in English and you translated that as best you could?
Good story. Good story here. Yeah, it was given to me in English, and our director back then, Mario Azzopardi from Malta, was a wonderful,
yes.
wonderful man, and he was one of those directors that just get it done kind of a guy. And
We've had him on.
I
He's
got
awesome.
he's great, and I got the text, and it was a paragraph, and it basically was describing the city rising, and it was in English, and they asked me to translate it into Czech, so I translated it into Czech. I did, not ChatGPT, and I sort of thought, well, why would you describe something that you're seeing on screen? That's basic law of filmmaking. Don't talk about what you're seeing. You're seeing it. So when we got there on the day, it was first day up. The camera's up and go, and we said, well, we'll do the Czech version first. So we do the Czech version. And we did one take of it, and I did the sort of the Czech, the city is rising, and then I'm expecting, well, we're going to do the English version, and we never did, because Mario said, I'm not going to give the editors the version to use the English version. We're going to do Czech and Czech only. So that's why the Czech has remained in there, because he basically forced the editors to choose the Czech because there were no other takes of me. There's no English take of me describing the rising of Atlantis.
I can appreciate what he did as a director, and I am glad of his choice. Had I been producer, I'm not sure I would have been too happy with him, but I'm glad of his choice.
That's how that one unfolded.
Man, I don't think he ever directed again. It's Stargate.
I don't know if it was because of that, but yeah, he wasn't around after that. But he was a well-known director, and he directed a lot.
Oh, absolutely. No, he did the pilot for SG-1.
Oh, did he? Okay, I didn't know that.
He did indeed. And Dinner Beef wanted to know, was there ever an episode of Atlantis that you heard that they did, or that you saw, that you're like, damn it, I wish I had been in that one?
Well, I wish I was on the railing at the end when they were all saying goodbye.
Yes.
I don't know where Zelenka was. I think he went
Sharon's
for a
there.
bathroom break or something.
Yeah,
I think
they brought Sharon in. Yeah, exactly. Where were you? You were on that. You were in that episode already. They could put you in the scene.
Yeah, I think that wasn't.
That's
Yeah, it was
right.
an episode I was in. So I don't. So there you go. That's my answer. I don't know why I wasn't saying goodbye to everyone there back then. I was busy working, as always.
That's it. Yeah, you
Building
were
the wormhole drive.
Thrusters at station keeping. We're on the ocean floor, or we're on the surface of the ocean now. That's wild. Yeah. Well, you know what? That sucks. I don't want to finish on that, David.
Is that all the questions that we have?
Oh man. Well, I don't want to get episode specific because it's not very fair. Do you remember working with Richard Kind?
Yes, I do. He was very.
Tell me about
He
Irresistible.
was wonderful. That was the one where there's some kind of substance that was making us all go crazy.
The pheromones.
The pheromones. The pheromones, don't you know? They always get you. Yeah, Richard Kind. I remember that was super fun. Yeah. And
I was there.
I remember when
days.
Homer Simpson, when Dan Castellaneta was on set, but he wasn't our set. It was on SG-1 set. I was starstruck by that. I thought that was, hey, there's Homer.
Oh my gosh.
That was super cool. You wouldn't recognize the bridge now. They've totally rebuilt that studio. There's like where the parkade used to be. There's more studio space there now, and there's a lot going on.
It so much happened there that is so key to everything that that all of us hold dear. And I every few years I'll go back and poke my head over there onto Boundary Road, and it's slightly less recognizable than before.
Yeah.
And there's something really sad about that. A lot of the locations that you guys had just don't exist anymore. And that's the passage of time. That's just the way it works.
Yeah. So. I need to say to you that thank you for keeping the flame burning for all these years. This has been, you kept the lights on. You literally did. You kept the lights on in between. And I think the fans and the producers and all of us owe you a big thank you for keeping this going when it didn't seem like it was going to go anywhere. It's I hope you get a lot of good out of this.
Well, I am so thrilled that the work that Darren and I have done, and so many other fans online have done, is being recognized. That means more than anything. It means so much to have you back and to be able to sit and reminisce and catch up. And I mean, the fact is, this thing is not going anywhere anytime soon. There are a lot more stories to be told, and I think that we are primed to have some really good ones, because I think they've picked well on the next one.
Yeah,
we're gonna.
Now we just got to
sitting and waiting now.
Yeah, and we just got one of those letter writing campaigns where we get Zelenka on the new show.
I wouldn't be surprised. There are certain characters who are not around, and there are certain characters who are, and it's that's already one in your corner. So they're shooting in London, but they have these things that go through the air that get air underneath them when you give them enough thrust, and so I've heard that they're good.
I can legally work in Europe, so.
There we go. All right, man. David Nykl, it's a pleasure.
It's been great, guys. Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure, and thank you for some great questions, David. And I look forward to doing this again one day.
Thank you, my friend. I'm gonna wrap it up over here. You take care of yourself.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Be well, sir. That is David Nykl, Radek Zelenka in Stargate Atlantis. My name is David Reed. You're watching the Stargate Oral History Project. If you enjoy this content and you want to see more like it on YouTube, do click that like button. It does make a difference with the show and will continue to help us grow our audience. Please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click subscribe. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few weeks on the Dial the Gate and gateworld.net YouTube channels. My tremendous thanks to Anthony and Lockwatcher for pulling this one off in the chat today. I have a piece of software that I've been using to collect the fan questions and put them into a Google Sheet on the back end. It doesn't always work. And those two, oh man, thank you for being so cool, guys, and pulling this thing off, because they said today it did not work. So we have a huge schedule coming up for you. And a lot of these I haven't even posted yet. David Warry Smith, who directed The Fifth Race, There But For the Grace of God, Pretense. Those are three of my favorite episodes right there. He is going to be joining us next week to discuss directing those shows. We also have, let me see here, Carrie McDowell, post-production supervisor, Stargate, SG-1, Atlantis, and Universe. This is the part of the process I am looking forward to the most over, because getting to talk with someone who is responsible for getting the sound and getting the music and all of the pieces of every take that are necessary to composing an episode and putting it all together and stirring this thing up and then serving it out. Carrie was on top of that. And it's going to be really great to have that conversation with her. I hope that that's going to be live. We just need to verify a couple of things first here. We just posted a little bit earlier, because it took a little bit of time for YouTube to square this circle and get this one greenlit. We've got P90 firearm training with Rob Fournier. And yes, that is me firing one of the 10 original P90s, FN P90s out of Belgium that were purchased for Stargate's SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis. And you can go and watch that specific scene if you don't want to watch the full thing, or if you want to listen to Rob sharing some amazing details about the whole process of training the team with that particular weapon and everything else that goes into firearm safety on set. Go to dialthegate.com to see all of the various shows that are going to be heading your way. We're going to have some more information for you really soon. Stargate Worlds Part 2 hopefully is going to be heading your way this Friday. I had a conversation with Katie Postma, my counterpart lead community manager, and Dan Elgren, who was the studio lead for Stargate Worlds yesterday. And it was a 2-hour conversation. And it was a good one. I haven't seen Dan since the USS Midway, when Stargate Continuum premiered at San Diego Comic Con in 2008. So there was a lot to talk about there. And he and I weren't always on the best of terms, and a lot of that was my fault. So it was really awesome to be able to sit down with him and catch up and get to know each other again and share some stories after 20 years. So 18 years. So it was a good time, and I'm looking forward to that one being released, but that's going to be a monster one to add content for, because not really a lot of editing in terms of cutting around the footage. It's going to be pretty much exactly as we recorded it, but I've got so much content from Stargate Worlds coming now in terms of assets that were created for the game, artwork, sound, and a number of other things, that bringing it together just right is a bit of a bear. So let's see how it goes. I think that's what I've got for you guys. I appreciate everyone who tuned in to make this episode special. And we will have some more episodes heading your way really soon. Again, keep an eye on dialthegate.com for all those specific details. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I appreciate you tuning in, and I will see you on the other side.